back to the beginning and repeat everything that you've said, that'd be great. Thanks.
Those
No
will just
worries.
be nuggets that'll be
But
missed.
I'd like to.
I do want to go back to
Yeah,
the
Michael,
top in
go ahead.
terms of like what Ken was saying, which is like one of the core things to understand about the situation that hiring managers are in is that they're going through a tremendous number of resumes right now, right? The market is incredibly competitive, and even like, we just opened up a couple of AP slots. We got over 100 applications just over the weekend. So, the hiring managers are going through a lot of resumes. And there's a few things that you can do to make yourself more appealing. As people were saying, make sure you highlight the requirements. Make sure you customize for the job you're applying for, because the clarity of, hey, right off the bat, I know this person matches the requirement, gets you to step two, right? So clarity is really important. Clarity is more important than creativity. Don't worry about standing out until you've established that you're a valid candidate, right? The other thing that jumps out at me in terms of clarity is a lot of people lead with a wall of text, and a wall of text is unreadable. And in fact, if I'm trying to go through a bunch of resumes, the last thing I want to do is read a full paragraph, right? So short, concise bullet points are your friends, and metrics. Use clear numbers to explain what you have done and what your impact has been, the value that you have generated, because it shows that you care about quantifiable mechanics and that you measure your progress, right?
Hey, Michael, could you do us a favor and give an example of what good metrics would be? Because that's really, really valuable.
So, for example, one of the things on my resume that I always cite is I took a project from concept to ship in 10 months. And it was a fully 3D action RPG in a web browser, the Unity plugin. And that's a pretty astonishing accomplishment. Anybody who's taken a game from concept to ship knows that doing it in less than a year is a pretty major thing. And doing it on a project that is on new technology and in a new space is a really impressive thing, right? So if you are a producer and you're an experienced producer, and the first thing you see on my resume is I can take a new innovative project from concept to ship in 10 months, then am I looking for that kind of person or not? Is that the kind of person that would fill this need, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that every hiring manager has a problem they're trying to solve, right? And so you're trying to make yourself look like the solution to that problem. You may not know what that problem is, but they're telling you in the job description, hey, this is what I need, right? So that goes back to that, like, customize the job application, because you want to say in very clear, very measurable ways up front at the top of your resume, I am the answer to your problem. If you can't say that in 3 sentences and 5 lines, you're doing it wrong.
Alissa, I'd like to pass the baton to you to end this section, because I believe you had another opinion on the topic. So go ahead. Alissa, you here?
Sorry. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I tried to speak up earlier, and I think my green box didn't light up, and
don't worry.
One of those things where nobody wants to hear from the woman. But P.S. The woman in the room. So yes, I do have some strong feelings about this. I have a big problem with somebody who says you need to have shipped 3 AAA games. That is already a ceiling that a marginalized demographic cannot meet, because we're just now catching up to the opportunity for us to have done that. If anybody's worked on a AAA game, you can't get it done in, like Michael did, in 10 months. So you can't, even if you've been in this industry for 20 years, you can't have shipped that many AAA games as a woman who then started off as as an associate producer. Like, it's so please apply for those things. Don't worry about having matched 100% of the requirements. Some of those requirements are bullshit. So put in your information, say what you've been doing, be proud of what you've been doing. And again, especially as a marginalized demographic, don't let those things stop you, because P.S., everybody else is putting their resume in too.
Yeah, I agree with this. And again, if your resume is clear, just like Michael, clarity versus creativity, I think that's really an important point here that everyone has highlighted. And so I guess it's really important to keep that in mind. And yet, don't hesitate to apply, even if like Alissa just said, you don't feel all the requirements. All right. Well, thank you. So I think we're gonna see, time is passing, time is flying by, and I'd like to move on to our next section. For anyone who has questions, once again, just write them down or keep them for our Q&A, and we'll make sure to allocate some time for these. So apart from the resume, we have a side dish accompanying this one, and that's the cover letter. So what about these cover letters? Well, Mike, this question goes for you, Paul, first. So in your opinion, how important are cover letters in today's job market for game producers? Do you feel they still hold weight, or they're just becoming obsolete?
Oh, so I'll take it this way. I find them to be a treat when I get them. There's something I almost look forward to. I'm like, ooh, okay, give me some interesting background. Like I know Michael had just said, like, can you summarize how you're trying to solve the problem that the recruiter has in a couple of sentences? Sometimes for me, I can't get everything out of that. I like to know a bit more about the person. Yes, you can draw that stuff out in the interview. And I think that there's a lot of value in what we said in terms of what gets in the resume. But when I'm looking at a million of these things, if there's something that at least will draw my eye, that gives me something to latch onto, that's like, you're more than just the numbers on your resume, this is compelling. And I don't think enough people do it. So when I see one, like I said, I'm like, ooh, this is a treat. I'm intrigued. So for me right now, it seems to be that helps somebody stand out for me just because someone's done it. It's whether or not it's good is a different question. But for me, that it gets me excited. It makes me like curious. I'll put it that way. That it sparks interest.
Ken, I believe you had a very different opinion on cover letters. So would you mind sharing your insights?
Hi.
Oh,
Good, how are you?
I hate them.
Go ahead.
Absolutely hate them. I hate writing them and I hate reading them. Personally. Well, the biggest problem is they all, certainly now, are almost all the same. It's it's a treat when they're not. Don't get me wrong, but the problem is now I got to read through the 90 that aren't to get to the 10 that are, right? And the biggest problem for this is AI. We know you've written it in AI, or so it used to be, I knew you went and Googled how to write a cover letter because I get the same template that I get when I look up how to write a cover letter, and it's always the same. So now AI is just basing it on the top 10 articles on how to write a cover letter. And so you get the same template, but now you get it with the ChatGPT flavor of using specific words from ChatGPT. And it's not like I can't go into ChatGPT and say, show me a cover letter for this job description I just wrote. And then I can immediately tell that you just did the same thing when you send me a cover letter, because I've got 10 versions of it. I've read them all. I know what it's going to feel like. And I just read through X number of cover letters. And guess what? You did not. The point of a cover letter is to differentiate yourself from others. And it loses all value if you're just doing what everyone else is doing.
And that's the lesson, right, Ken? That's the lesson.
The lesson. And the other problem is they're too long. I'm not looking for this isn't to whom it may concern. I found your missive, no, just short, sweet, tell me. And so exactly. I prefer just having a summary at the top of the resume itself, as opposed to getting a full letter in front of the resume. Just summarize in a paragraph at the top, and then I think highlights.
But I think that's what and I agree with you. It's you need to differentiate. There needs to be something interesting there. And if you're getting the templated, you're getting the same shit, then absolutely it turns you off once you get there.
I say this knowing I've intentionally gotten interviews or jobs explicitly because of cover letters.
Because of the cover letter.
So I'm not saying I don't do them. I do them when they're required, and I do them when they set you apart, right? And I try to add the flavor. If anything, I work with people I know who are over there saying, hey, how do you like your cover letters? What are the things you look for? How, could you take a look at this real quick? Is this going to catch attention, or what don't you like? By the way, I recommend that for anything. If you're doing cover letter, resume, whatever, have a friend look it over, have somebody that's at the company look it over.
Yeah. But
that's my personal take. I know it's not everyone's take. That's just mine.
No, it's good. But Herrick, you had started to touch on it earlier, and I didn't want to jump in.
He's raising his hand, and he's down at the bottom of my screen, so I don't know if we're catching
it. Michael, go ahead. Or Herrick, go ahead.
No, Michael first.
So I think there's Cover letters to me are kind of like narrative in games. It'll make a good application better, but it's not going to make an application work that I wasn't already paying attention to, right? So a cover letter is the inverse of what I was saying before, where it's like creativity really matters. Authenticity really matters. Storytelling really matters, right? Don't come into a cover letter with the generic, as someone with 20 years in the industry, I see you have these problems that I can solve. Like, no, it's just not interesting at all, right? You've got to be, that's where you've got to stand out and really do something narratively interesting, right? Where it's like, hey, I know the solution to your problems because I've done this thing for like 15 years and I'm passionate about it, right? And it's like, so you've got to have a hook, right? And you've got to really drive a sales pitch, right?
Yep.
A dry, boring paragraph that just reproduces what's in your resume does nobody any good, right? A short, punchy paragraph that says, hey, I've got a personality and a sense of humor does 100% more work for you than reproducing your qualifications, right? So
Yeah.
cover letters not going to make or break the thing, right? But if you're going to do a cover letter, make sure it's a sales pitch, make sure it's
Yes.
punchy, and make sure it stands out.
Also, make it about your value to me, not how much you want to work for my company.
Yep.
Right? It's always like, I see this all the time on LinkedIn too. I know this isn't exactly the subject, but people come out and they tell you the worst tragedies and it's horrible and you feel so bad on a human level. I'm about to lose my house. If I don't get a job soon, I'm in trouble. My health insurance failed. I need a job desperately and I've applied to 700 places. And you feel for this, but it's not telling me why I should hire you. And so you need to come across as, I am Alissa Brodsky. I got 20 years in this fucking industry. Here's why you need to be, here's what I'm going to come in and fix all your shit, right? Excuse my language, but this is also why I bring up Alissa specifically, is it touches what we were talking about in chat. If you are in a situation where you're kind of having to fill in some blanks on what the JD is, or maybe your resume isn't like a perfect square peg for that round hole, this is where you rub those edges off. This is where you fill in those blanks. This is how you sell yourself as the proper solution.
So
and that cover letter will do it. That I'm going to go right with what Michael said. It's not going to change the resume, but it can flavor the perception of it.
My take on this is like completely opposite of everything anyone has said up until now, which is, I think that cover letters to me, because I'm in the indie space, I have a small indie stealth startup, and when I like start looking for like people to fill a job role, I don't have a lot of time, because when I'm like looking for someone, I'm not doing work on the game. That's literally what's happening. So I'm not doing actual work. And so if I made a post and I was like, I'm looking for some 3D artists, I got like 300 messages on LinkedIn, and I didn't have time to go through every single one of those cover letters that I was sent. And it actually ended up becoming a headache for me. And so I actually would prefer someone who just sent me like, hi, I'm interested. This is what I do. This is, and like, take a look at my LinkedIn. Let me know if you want to chat. And that's like enough for me to be able to make a decision about whether or not I want to put them in an interview.
I think that's really good perspective, Herrick, right? Like different people at different companies have different requirements. So I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm thinking like, oh, well, my HR rep does a lot of this filtering for me. So I see like 7. This is exciting. Yeah. But I totally get your experience. So it's, again, if you're applying somewhere, try to know more about what is that
you're
person
messaging the hiring manager, right?
Know your audience.
So when you message the hiring manager and you're trying to get a hold of them, or you're trying to send them a resume, or you're trying to get like in touch with them to put in your application, like, understand your audience. Understand, like, if it's a really big company like Daybreak for Kenn, he has someone who's helping out. But if it's a small indie stealth startup, like a small group of people where it's like 10 people doing a thing, like the person doing the HR work is the guy in charge of everyone. Like, it's just that guy. So like, keep in mind your audience. He probably has even less time. And I know Kenn has almost no time. So like, just keep that in mind.
What I like to say is I have a full-time job and it's not yours.
Right.
You know, I already have a full-time job and I just don't have time to do yours too. So, and that's the problem we run into all the time is you're trying you need to build your team. It's an important part of your job, but exactly like you said, every minute I'm looking through resumes. If I get 100 resumes, how much time do you think I'm giving those? If I give them 5 minutes each, right? That's 500 minutes of time. I'm not, that's a lot of time. So
Yeah, no,
I
like when
don't, I
the
don't have
300 messages, I literally worked for 18 hours to get through all of them to be able to like say, okay, these are the 2 people that I actually want to talk to. That's crazy to me, but like, you know, it's something to keep in mind.
that. I hate saying this, but a lot of the initial pass on resumes is trying to figure out how to filter out resumes, not how to filter them in. Like it's great when you're going through and you go, oh, wow, this person goes right to the top of the A pile. But the majority of it is, okay, this is the cut pile, cut pile, cut pile, cut pile. And it's so brutally, bureaucratically, banally efficient. But that's
You
the
have to
truth.
think about how is your resume going to stand out in 2 bullet points, literally? Because like, where do you think that's going to go? Like, do you think that like if it's going through a giant like HR filter system, like great, like that's going to have like a bunch of stuff and it's going to give them like the really big like summary. But if it's coming to me, I'm putting it into a Discord. I've got 2 bullet points. I'll say this guy does this, this, and this, and this looks right. Take a look, art lead. Let me know what you think. And that's it.
Am I missing that diamond in the rough? Probably, but I'm not looking for perfect half the time. I'm looking for, can this person do what I need them to do? Am I getting 5 to 10 candidates that look like they can do a great job? Let's get them in the funnel.
Thanks. Well, thanks for all these insights. These are honestly great. I didn't think we would spend so much time on cover letters, but that's honestly really insightful. And I love what I'm seeing in the chat. Honestly, there is, but I'm also what I'm seeing in the chat. So everyone keep the conversation going over there. I'm seeing some great comments. So yeah, please keep doing so. That's how that's how we want these production roundtables to go to be as interactive as possible. All right, I'm going to move on to the next topic now, which is on top of resume and sometimes cover letters, online profile. There's this whole other aspect of your application that you sort of need to take care nowadays, and that's your online presence, or as some people call it, your professional branding. Kenn already hinted at it very briefly. But my next question will be for Michael first. So what do you think, which platforms like LinkedIn or other personal websites you feel are becoming essential tools for professional branding? And what is the key advice you would give to producers to present themselves online? How should they do it? Michael, the floor is yours.
I mean, I don't know that I'm an expert in this. I'm kind of fuddling my way through it just like everybody else is. I'm trying out Blue Sky these days just to try something different, see if there's an audience there. I used to love the developer community on Twitter before it became X, but it's not an environment I can be in anymore. I think that the key thing is you have to look at your own profile from the eyes of a hiring manager, right? And one of the most valuable things you can do, like Kenn was saying earlier about resumes and cover letters, is get somebody else to take a look at your materials and give you an honest critique from the perspective of, if I were hiring somebody, would this person look appealing, right? And like one of the things that I see a lot on LinkedIn is people who are like spending a lot of time and energy putting out a lot of negativity about the state of the world, about their interactions with recruiters, about their interactions with the job process. And when you put out a consistently kind of negative version of yourself, that's not appealing for people who are looking to hire, right? I'm not saying that like toxic positivity is the answer. I'm not saying that like hiding the truth is the answer. But you have to be conscious, as Haley was saying in the chat buffer, that marketing yourself is a key part of what you're doing when you're on the job search, right? And your social media presence is a sales job. It's what people are going to evaluate when they're looking at you. And I spend a fair amount of time on LinkedIn because I care about game development. I care about the industry. I care about the people who are in the industry. And if I see you there consistently having, a positive impact, contributing, making meaningful, contributions, I'm going to recognize that. If I see you constantly being negative, constantly cadging other people, constantly being down about things, I'm going to recognize that. We're pattern matching machines. Part of what we love about games is they enable us to indulge that part of ourselves, right? So when you're putting yourself out there on social media, when you're putting yourself out there on any public platform, you have to ask yourself, is this the version of myself that I would hire? Is this the version of myself that I want other people publicly to be thinking about when they think about me, right? And try to make that the version of yourself that you believe in honestly as the best version of yourself.
Great answer. Ken,
I think-
you wanna follow up with this, or Paul? Go ahead, Paul.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's a great side chat going on this too. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say on the last thing that you mentioned, Michael. Like, I think one of the things that I recall when a lot more social media stuff started kicking off at a time when I was at EA, there was a lot of like corporate oversight on like how you present yourself online if you're going to talk about things. And I think the last comment that you had triggered a memory in my brain of me personally feeling like my personal brand everywhere was like a sanitized, very professional version of myself, which wasn't authentic. And I didn't enjoy that aspect, but I very much remember that being a thing. And I'm like, how do you tell someone to be professional but still be you? And like, I think the word that you mentioned, which is authentic, but still the best version of you, because people will look at this. And this is, in the age of that we're in now, this stuff is so very important. It's someone's first contact with you most of the time. So I think it was just I just kind of wanted to jump on what you said.
Agree with what you said. You know, I ended up in like a very interesting conversation while I was at EA where some stuff that I did ended up on the front page of Reddit, but because it was so wholesome, it made its way all the way up to the CEO. And they were like, this dad joke was wonderful. Like, we just love it. Like, because I was like, it was like the most wholesome, most innocuous dad joke. Like, what is Aquaman like with his water? Just ice, but it's like justice with like ice capitalized. Like, you know, just like wholesome and like dad jokey and like it's good, you know. But it's me. Like, I like dad jokes, you know.
Ken, you want to add on top of that?
I think for me, a lot of this for personal branding, I'm in a different spot than Michael. Like, I dove into this after my layoffs from MGM in April 23. I decided, okay, now definitely kept it, you know, a cleaner version of myself online, a slightly sanitized, as he said. But I also decided, you know what, I'm just going to be me, and I've been me for years, and you know, it just happens that I can do versions of myself. I've been doing MMOs for years, so every character I ever play is a different version of myself, right?
Yep.
And it's just taking on another role is just, you know, old hat. So I dove into deciding what is the part of myself. And there's different times and places. We just had this talk in the coffee chat this week on times and places. Like, you want to complain? The job market sucks. Everything sucks. Sending out applications sucks. Building resumes sucks. Networking sucks. All of it's horrible. Don't go on LinkedIn and say that to the world. I get on a call with friends like you, or I get in a coffee chat and I say, yeah, I commiserate. And I say, look, there's how I want the world to be and how the world is, and I'm stuck in the middle, right? And I can't fix capitalism. I can't fix the job market. I can't fix human perception, but I can control what I can do. And so for my branding perspective, getting out on LinkedIn, it started a lot with the things I missed doing with my team, which was mentoring my team of 40 program managers. And what would I talk to them about? We did a weekly Friday learning, and I just decided to keep it up. And at first it was going to be Fridays, and then it turned into 3-4 days a week. But I also started setting up mentorship to kind of meet people and kind of keep that going. I missed my one-on-ones with my team. And then I just started talking about just story time with Ken, I guess you could say, of like, yeah, I remember this time I was up at 1 a.m. working at Activision on this game we were about to release. I'd been crunching for, 7 months straight. And it's just sharing those stories, or sharing, hey, this week I got 3 new calls. I've sent out 10 resumes. Here's what I'm doing. It just became kind of a thing that people glommed onto because they were also going through these same things. And it became just kind of my brand, which has always been a carefully cultivated uncle dad version of myself for a leadership style. And then that developed. Also, during the pandemic, I started running a Clubhouse room that eventually evolved into a Discord group. And so that is how I've built it. I think the gold standard we all look up to on brand building in the game industry right now is Amir Satvat, who, if you don't know who he is, where have you been hiding? And if you're job hunting, you need to find him. But just understanding how he did that with his relentless optimism, which is incredibly infectious. And I I joke around that I'm the dark-hearted cynic of whatever community I'm in, even though I'm really not. And the more you get to know me, people are like, Ken, you're not really a cynic. And I'm like, shh, don't give it away. But there's a way you present yourself that itself becomes kind of self-deprecating, and that itself becomes endearing. But it's also very different. Some of this is generational. I'm Gen X. A lot of Gen Z and Zoomers and Alpha, they have been brought up. They've been raised in a pandemic world. They've been raised that we're all on camera with each other. They've been raised in a way that we didn't get raised. And so for us, networking in the before times was very much face-to-face, and they've learned that they lost out on that. And they lost out on the remote working revolution because everybody got to do that. And now suddenly, sorry, the remote jobs aren't for you. Go away. And so now they're in a super frustrating world that is not of their creation. And yeah, they're sharing it where they share it. And I'm here for it, but I'm also here to kind of warn them, the hiring managers are still millennials and Gen X. So please be aware that you can't control them. You can only control how you react to them. So it's not telling you to be inauthentic. It's telling you find your times and places.
Great conclusion for this part. Can appreciate it, and hail to the King Amir for indeed like building this online presence on LinkedIn and all.
He's great.
Yeah, yes. Definitely. So yeah, if you haven't heard about him, please have a look at Amir Sadvat on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure.
Or just go to amirsadvat.com.
.com, exactly. Yeah.
When you're talking about where to build communities and where to go, where we should go, and it's all like besides LinkedIn, I think that's one community. Discord's another, and depending on what your discipline is, like maybe you're hanging out on Stack Exchange and GitHub, maybe you're hanging out on Behance and ArtStation. I don't know.
All right, thank you, Ken. And last part of this talk, we have about 15 to 20 minutes left. So I would just like to spend a few minutes on certifications. So a bit of research I did myself, and in recent game production openings that I've seen on LinkedIn and on different job boards, well, it turns out that certifications is something that is starting to come across more and more often. So I would like to ask the leaders and the seniors here in the room, what do you think about certification? Do you feel they are actually useful? They can make a tangible impact on an application? Do you feel they may be valuable for more entry-level producers versus advanced roles? Let's start with you, Michael. Would you have a take on this?
Actually, I was going to be a producer and be like time cop. I think we've got like 15 minutes left, and if we're going to leave time for Q&A, we may not have time to spend 10 minutes ranting about the uselessness of certifications, right?
All right. Okay.
So
Eric and I alone would take 20 minutes. Yeah.
We promised somebody 5 minutes, right? So like, I want to make sure we have room for that and the Q&A on top of it, right?
Sure. So, well, let's go maybe in the Q&A. Maybe just one answer. Do you feel certifications are useful? Ken? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
With a bunch of caveats. I'll keep it there.
Right.
Not all. Some certs work against you. This is what I want to get into when we have time to get into it.
So,
and this is where Herrick and I are going to go back and forth. This is literally how we met. Was this argument?
Ken and I had a very long and wonderful discussion about, and it was actually a disagreement, which by the way, we're very good friends, he and I, about whether or not having a PMP or not.
That's literally how we met. Actually, is we disagreed strongly on the PMP cert. Yeah. We'll leave it at that for now. That'll give Alice something to look forward to.
and by the way, I am PMP certified. Ken is not, but like Ken is very, very capable as a project manager, and so he has the school of thought, and I was
on my path to get it, and then I got into games and realized how much I didn't care for it anymore.
Paul, Michael, do you think certifications are useful? Yes or no, Paul?
My quick version is no, and I also barely see anybody come around with it in my neck of the woods. It's not even something that I think I've ever seen over here in Sweden for the last.
All right.
Not a lot of Prince 2s over there.
Nope.
And Michael, what about you?
It's not necessary, but it can be a value add in certain contexts.
Got it. All right.
My one context add to that is that the old version of the PMP is going to be very waterfall centric, and the game industry specific has evolved into a very agile centric. The new version of the PMP and training around it have become much more agile and they've added it on.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get more value depending on the type of project and the type of work.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you the short 30-second version to moderate the caveat. So I said certs are important. I actually don't find them personally important. The CSM especially is 2 days at a airport Hilton class with an open book test. But I also started in IT years ago, and it's the same thing as a CompTIA A+. It's not a hard cert to get. So it's really less of a, did it help you get the job? No, but when I'm looking for those initial filters, it's an easy filter to find out the people who bothered going through and getting a cert as opposed to people who didn't. Makes it an easy way for me to say, okay, got it. You know, knowing how easy it is to even bother getting a CompTIA A+ was like, okay, well, if you didn't bother, that's an easy one. Now I can limit to these resumes. Same thing with a CSM. I don't really care
PMP,
about the
though,
CSM
is
itself.
different for one reason, and that's it is a hard certification.
All right.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Now we're going to get into more, but
Exactly.
what I'm saying is think of it as more of a razor.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you guys for these quick insights on the certifications part. I think it's still useful to hear this from you. All right. Alice, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to go with Q&A first, or the 5 minutes for Mitch McKay?
Yeah, let's give Mitch his 5 minutes of airtime.
All right. Go ahead.
I think I had said Michelle, and I had typed Michelle, typo. But it's Mitch McKay. So Mitch, if you want to unmute yourself and hop on the line, give us your spiel, come to the group asking something or something to offer, or share a tip.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna ask something. So I guess I'll need to say what I'm about. So yes, hi, I'm Mitch. I have 6 years experience in QA. Within that time, I have done a solo project as a QA tester, and I did was working on the Pirate Queen, the Forgotten Legend, which was really cool. I really enjoyed that. And then since I've been laid off from the Lala Studios, I've kind of been working on, as we're talking about certifications, like going on to a games producer certification, done a like a MicroMasters project manager, took on another project manager trainee program, which goes through Prince 2, both the foundation and practitioner and the agile PM, and there's another one. And then I'm also doing a little side studio project, try and get my producer experience up. So what my question would be, what are the pitfalls and anything to look out for startup studios, and where's a good resource to look for, or when the best time to look for publishers? So we're kind of in the prototype phase at the moment.
I might be the best
Herrick.
person to answer that.
Yeah,
so
Herrick.
I'm in that right now. Pitfalls, I could fill an entire hour with that, but the simple version is everything's going to take longer than you expect it to. All of the requirements that you think that you need to meet are probably wrong, and you should seek out mentors in the space that are highly capable that can help you kind of jump over those problems. Because there's just things that have already been solved many, many times. The other thing, you need to learn how to do pitch decks and how to pitch correctly, because that is hard. That is something most people don't realize is important, and it's probably one of the most, if not the most important skill that you have to learn how to do. Because if you have a crap pitch deck, if your pitch deck is 30 pages and it's like a rambling mess, no one's going to pay attention to you. No one's going to see it. Final note, learn how to go on meet to match. Meet to match is highly important for GDC. It's important for DICE. If you're going to go to DICE, make sure that you're going for investors. If you're going to GDC, make sure you start setting up meetings with people immediately. Learn how to communicate via text and have a very, very clear understanding of what you are trying to get. Meet to match, by the way, as a quick little thing, meet to match is a way to set up meetings with publishers. That's it. End of story. When you go to GDC, Meet to Match will allow you to connect with different ones. You tell them what your game's about, what you're doing, and then it will allow you to actually set up some time at GDC where you will get 15 to 30 minutes of their time, and you need to make the most out of that. So you need to also practice your pitch, find some sort of mentor, someone who can actually give you the time and advice to be able to get you to that point where you can pitch in 15 minutes and tell them everything. Anyway, that's a giant info dump.
It's a giant info dump. I think I had a question, but I would think of maybe we should go platform and talk at some point so we could
Add me on
run through it.
LinkedIn. If you want some advice on how to do this, I am happy to add you on LinkedIn and give you some advice on how to make a pitch deck and how to do whatever. And my name is very unique. You can find me easily on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we also just
Michael,
went through this at Other Side over the last couple of years. We started up a new project. We went out and pitched it. We sold the studio. Now we actually have huge advantages because we have Warren Spector and Paul Neurath, which is not trivial, right? But one of the things that was really clear as we went through this, and I've been through this in the past, I've been through this on the publishing side. I used to be on the Greenlight intake pipeline for THQ, right? The bar for what a pitch has to do has been raised significantly, right? It used to be you could walk into a room with 5 interesting people, a great pitch, and you could get a development deal. You could get $1 million, you could get a year's worth of runway, you could stand something up and show that you actually had the ability to deliver. These days, people want to see a functioning prototype that delivers hands-on gameplay. If you don't have a functioning prototype that demonstrates hands-on gameplay, really question whether it's worth the cost to be at someplace like Develop or DICE or GDC, because the thing that investors are looking for right now is, I don't have any questions about whether this game's going to be fun or not, because I can put my hands on it right now and play it, and it's fun. And if you can't meet that bar and you don't have the track record, you don't have an established studio, you're going to have a really hard time getting anybody to pony up money.
I agree with everything Michael said. I want to add something. If you don't have the 3 solid pillars of your studio, you're basically dead on arrival. That's art, that's tech, and that's design. If you don't have those 3 things, then they are not going to give you the time of day. Because if you don't have the tech guy that can actually make the thing, they're not going to care. If you don't have the art guy who actually knows how to make it worth something worth actually looking at, they're probably not going to give you the time. Now, this is a sliding scale based off of how much money you're looking for, obviously, but still, you need an art guy. And then finally, if you can't show in some way design chops to be able to make the thing, once again, you might be dead on arrival.
all right. Well, thank you very much, guys, and thanks, Mitch, for this question. Appreciate it. I'll be helped. All right, we have about 7 minutes left. I'd like to leave the floor to 1 to 2 questions. So, anyone who has questions regarding what we've talked about previously, raise your hand. I'll just pick really randomly, not necessarily order. I apologize, if you raise your hands and I don't pick you. But go ahead. Does anyone has any question that they'd like to ask? All right, we have Diego here. Diego, you can open your mic and go ahead for your question.
Hi, and nice to meet you all. My name is Diego Bernal. I'm based in Mexico City, and I've been a producer for around 5 years. But my question is that I've been encountering a big wall. And for example, in getting into a AAA job or even in a bigger studio. Here in Mexico, we don't have such as a big industry as we have in other places. So sometimes we have to work on smaller scale projects, or even more on IT, and on the side project we do video games. So that has been my life. That is the only way that most of the studios here in Mexico City that are not outsourcing, we can deliver games. So my 2 questions are: first, on the barrier of the AAA games requirements that I don't meet. I worked on indie games that have been published on Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and everything all around, but I don't have a AAA experience. I think that question has been responded time before. But my other question is, for the workflow for the amount of workload here, for example, in Mexico, that we need to deliver, in the past 2 years, I needed to deliver around 20 projects, from video games, small video games, to web development, to app development. And it has been because some of them require 3, 4, 6 months. But in the past 2 years, I've delivered around 25 plus projects. But I came up with that into an interview, and they told me that's not possible. That definitely is nothing that you can ever achieve, because here you manage around 2 to 3 projects, and you're telling me that you manage around 5 to 6, and I'm like, yeah, I really get burned out, but that is my reality. Every day, day to day, I need to manage around 6 projects from 6 different teams because it's some parts of the only way that here in Mexico we can sustain a development. And I've encountered this barrier twice. So I think, am I the problem? Or am I? What am I doing wrong? Or do I just need to place? Or how can I approach this on a different way?
So maybe I'm misunderstanding. Are you saying you're having trouble presenting your current work product to companies you're applying for? You're having trouble getting through the interviews? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay.
All around.
Because they're saying they don't believe you with the 5 or 6. I'm not even sure they do or don't believe you. I'm not on these calls. But if you tell me you're managing 5, 6 projects at once, while it may be possible, I'm going to push back hard on that, saying, do you think that's do you think that's correct? Do you think that's appropriate? Because I'm not looking for someone that can come in and kind of manage like 5 teams. Man, you're giving them in a 40-hour week, you're giving them 8 hours, but you're not doing that. So now I'm hearing that you're managing your time by just throwing all your time at it and you're burning out. So do you know how to manage? There's an old saying, a good scrum master can handle 2 teams. A great scrum master can handle 1. Right? Are you coming into this telling me that you just know how to do 5 projects barely by the skin of your teeth? Because that's what I'm hearing when you're telling me this. I'm imagining that I'm on the other side of an interview and a candidate tells me they're managing 5 to 6 projects at once. What's your timeline on these? Are you throwing them out the door every 2 months? Because if I'm managing a project that's got certain quality bars, that doesn't sound fantastic to me. It's the same as when people come in and they get upset that their game jam projects don't count. Well, a game jam project is a great skill set. I love game jams for a lot of reasons. It's a good way to network. It's a good way to meet people. It's a good way to level up your skills on a weekend, have fun. But as far as applicable experience to what I'm doing day to day, it's apples and oranges, right?
I would agree with what Ken's saying. Like, it, not trying to knock on what you're doing, by the way. Like, I think it's wonderful that you're trying to get a breadth of experience. I have 1 project that I'm managing, and it's a full-time job. So like when I think about what you're saying, like, I don't really have a grasp on every project that you're working on, but I would wonder, how big are these? Like, are they large projects? Are they small? Like, are they quality even? Like, and I'm not trying to insult you or anything by saying that, but like, I would have questions about quality because there's the iron triangle, which is time, quality, money.
Yes.
Like
totally agree.
You know, like think about it in that, and that's going to be something that is just going to be a common question you get. So you need to prepare for that.
Okay, just to give a little bit more of context, sometimes some projects are on a full year, some of them 6 months, 8 months, and in between we have projects like that are around like 2 to 3 months. For example, delivering small web pages or delivering small apps or development for marketing and publishing. But the bigger ones are like a year or 8 months. So we have like these strong developments, but in the meantime, I still have to manage in a smaller, on more quantity, but smaller time frame, more projects.
My advice is very straightforward. Focus on the big stuff, and then whenever you're marketing yourself effectively, also say, I have a side thing that I'm doing with all these other things, and this is also here, but these are the focus, right? It's the big stuff that's the focus. That's going to be the
all right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you guys because we are at time. So thank you so much for this question, Diego. And so apologies for other people who wanted to ask more. But feel free to reach out to these people on LinkedIn if you want more information or if you have other questions. In any case, we'll have more game production roundtables to address some of these topics. So I'll stop talking and I'll give back the mic to Alice.
Quentin, thank you so much for being our moderator today. This was way too short, wasn't it? This was just so fast, and there's so many questions. Everyone, thank you so much for joining today and for your enthusiasm. Because there's so many questions, I want you to have our Discord. We have a specific Discord channel just for a Discord room for the Game Production Roundtable. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you, Kenn and Herrick and Alissa and Paul and Michael and Quentin. Yes, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Everyone.